tragic crash of the UPS MD-11 in Louisville last week has sent shockwaves throughout the industry. And whilst it seems clear that attachment of the engine is a major contributing factor, we're going to naturally wait for the full report to be released to find out the causes of this horrible accident. Whilst it seems the pilots in this case were pretty much helpless to do anything, we can still use this event as a reminder for us all the importance of proper training and currency in emergency situations. In this episode, I'm going to go into the importance of multi-engine training, the simulation of engine failures for instructors, and a quick look at some training accidents closer to home. I'm going to discuss all this and more coming right up. So strap in and let's get into it.
Good morning, 7640, 95 Mallow, 7 PAB with altitude.
Coordinating, Halo and runner, bank, talent, bank pressure rolling at 30 degrees. That's 30 degrees there. Simbo star 9000, 1013, KFR 25.
G'day everyone and welcome to episode 187 of the Flight Training Australia podcast, a podcast all about flight training and flying in Australia and beyond. G'day, I'm your host Trent Robinson and thank you for joining me for this very special 4th birthday celebration. That's right, 9th of November 2021, I came up with the idea. Well, my wife pushed me into it really, but I started a podcast and here we are 4 years later, if you can even believe it, 187 episodes. Pretty monumental. I'm pretty excited about that and very, very cool achievement indeed. So to celebrate, I've put a 50% discount on Patreon memberships. If you would like to support what I'm doing, jump on. You can get an annual subscription, which is already heavily discounted. And this time, you get another 50% off. Or you can just do a monthly pay-as-you-go, whatever you like. 3 different tiers. All goes to just helping the time I spend putting everything together and equipment and the like. So thank you, everybody. And here's to another 4 years and beyond. Hey, let's go. I had to run down to Perth last week, a little family emergency, but took the opportunity to have a bit of a break and also pop in to Jandakot, see the guys down at Revesco there, which is really great. Caught up with Hubert and the team and John Goldsmith. Fantastic simulator center, guys. If you haven't been there before, apart from the Boeing 777, doing the MCC training can be used for airline interview practice as well as just, go for an airliner experience. They've also got the King Air down there. So they've got a B200 fixed base King Air. It's all the Proline 21. Just like I used to operate up here in Darwin. Great sim, full wraparound visuals. And they've also got their DA42 simulator as well. Again, full wraparound screen, sit in the cockpit just like you're being sitting in the real aircraft. And some great simulator opportunities there as well to really enhance your skills and practice. And definitely the kind of stuff that I'm about to be talking about in today's episode. But the other sim, which you shouldn't forget down there as well, is my little sim. It's just the Desktop Elite AT11i sim. You've probably seen them around most of the flight schools, but I have recently done an upgrade on that and put a touchscreen GTN 750 GPS into that one. So if you are operating a 650 or 750, you want to get a bit more hands-on practice and use it in the flight mode, as well as utilize that for IPCs or any other training as well. Go to see Hubert and the team down at Revesco there, and they will be able to help you out. There is nothing better than just getting your hands on the knobs and the buttons and really being able to work these units to really get familiar with how they are. You can sort of read a book until you're blue in the face, but you really need that hands-on practice. So definitely do that and check things out. I also popped into Bunbury Flying School down there, saw Patrick and the team, had a quick catch up with them and had a quick look at the Nanchang and the setup there. They've also got a great Redbird simulator down there that they're utilizing as well. And simulators Moving ahead, folks, I can definitely tell you there's some interesting changes coming up, especially with the likes of VR and where this all goes. This technology in flight training is really quite fantastic and very, very exciting indeed. And definitely going to talk about that more in another episode soon. But moving on to today's topic. Just horrific footage that I'm sure you've all seen now, and a bit hard to avoid it really on the socials and online. But just heart goes out to the families and first responders that had to attend that horrific scene, for not just those on board, the 3 crew, but also those that just happened to be in the wrong spot at the wrong time on the ground ahead. Look, it's obviously, like I said, still under investigation, and I do talk about this often when there's a terrible crash, but I noticed Captain Joe and a few others also made some statements which I want to support, that it is human nature to wonder what the hell happened and to speculate and all that, but, you know, do that to yourself and amongst your mates and stuff, but just don't feel the need to have to voice it all on the phone, on the internet and on forums and things. Yes, we do need to learn from these things, and we'll learn from them by utilizing the facts and the accurate information rather than, you know, just hearsay and everything else. It's only natural that we're going to talk about this and wonder what the hell happened. And that is the beauty of the aviation industry, that we do find out what happened and go put steps in place to try and ensure that it never happens again. But whilst we're not going to talk about that particular accident, I want to use it as a catalyst to just remind us of what multi-engine failure training, or even single engine, but I've talked about single engine a little bit, but multi-engine training and how we conduct simulations and, you know, realism versus safety and risk mitigation. I talked not long ago about VMCA accidents after a spate of crashes in America from VMCA training, or engine failure training that resulted in VMCA training and a VMCA accident. But this is more about just our run-of-the-mill engine failure routine. So the real risk window, I guess you can call it, is that rotation to 400 feet AGL. Now, in many light twin SOPs, we don't simulate engine failures after rotate and below 400 feet AGL. Unfortunately, that's exactly when an engine failure is going to hurt the most. The aircraft has got the nose pitched up, it's slow, it's dirty with takeoff flap and gear, and very vulnerable to an engine failure in that window until we start to accelerate more and climb away. Why 400 feet? It's a training safety line. Below that, you're going to need your maximum performance and minimum distraction, spot-on handling skills. Right. The problem is, for training, what do we do with that window? We can teach a rejected takeoff before, an engine failure on upwind after that. But what about that middle section? And for most of us, we just talk about it. But sometimes that's not enough. So how do we fix that? Well, we'll come back to that in a minute. Engine failure drill. The core flow for the majority of you, I'm sure, is something along the lines of mixture up, pitch up, power or throttle up, gear up and flap up. Now, using your POH and operator SOPs, your instructor will take you through this process and discuss the drill, how it's to be done, the speed, and the different considerations depending on the various phases of flight that you're going to be in. But one thing I'll always teach is we do the same checklist every single time. So mixture up, effectively, best power. You unless you're at a high density altitude situation, generally you want full rich for takeoff and go around, full forward for props as well, of course. So it's really just checking that it's there. And why first? Well, because a lot of engine out performance assumption is a fuel potential issue. But we need the fuel up. We need the mixtures rich before we start putting in the pitch and the power. Right? Mixture up, pitch up. Now, this can be two things. Sometimes when we talk about pitch, we talk about nose attitude. But here we are talking about props. All right, so again, we want to be full fine, ready to go, and throttle up. Max available power on the live engine. Now, the interesting thing is there is some, not controversy, but, differing of opinions that why the hell would you go pitch full fine and throttle full power? If you do that in a turbine engine, you're going to probably redline it potentially and overtorque it. A lot of airplanes in that high category, you can't actually go full power because you will redline it. All right. Now, for most light twins, Seminoles, Duchesses, that sort of stuff, if you don't do anything but full power, you're going to be in a world of hurt. There isn't always a one-size-fits-all technique. But what we do want to be careful of is, even though we're doing emergency training, doesn't make it an excuse to redline an engine, overwork it, cause it damage, and potentially be chipping away at a real engine failure, setting one up down the line. Right? So all done nice and smoothly. So after throttle, we come up to gear up and flap up. Many, many accidents have happened and the aircraft has been found in a gear down, flap down state. I know some students coming from other schools come up to me and they will skip gear up and flap up because they'll go, well, I've already done that. Now, remember, the whole point of this is, well, you think you did it. You should have done it, absolutely. But what if you didn't? And that could be the critical mistake. Right? I've had students forget to put the gear up because they've been distracted with radio calls and just unfamiliar territory. So do it as part of your check. It takes an extra second and could mean all the difference. All right. Once we've done the main drill, we then move into identifying. So mixture up, pitch up, power up, gear up, flap up in about that sort of pace. Identify dead leg, dead engine. Now, as always, that's the dead leg, which is the one not doing anything. Identify the throttle, smoothly close the throttle, and you shouldn't get any change in pitch or yaw. And the pitch we're talking about in that case is the nose pitch attitude and the sound and yaw of the engine, yaw of the nose. Once we've done that, we're going to fix or feather. Now, that will depend on our altitude. Again, every school will have their own idea, but generally speaking, somewhere between below 1,000 to MSA, if you're IFR, you just feather the engine outright. We don't want to be head down in the cockpit trying to fix an engine. Right, we'll worry about it and try and maybe attempt to restart later if it's recommended and practical to do so. All right, but once that's done, we want to climb ahead somewhere, 5 to live or whatever the recommended setting is, get to safe altitude, review what you've done, shut down the engine properly, and then plan your return to land. So this is what everybody's generally taught. But there's one crucial bit that comes right before all that, right before we do the drill. And that is, remember to control the aeroplane. Fly the damn plane. Right? So engine failure recognized, ball centered, wings level, pitch the nose up for blue line, usually 5 to 7 degrees thereabouts in a light twin, and then perform the drill. Remember, we're not trying to achieve blue line to begin with. We just want to set the nose attitude so we shouldn't bleed speed off below it by the time we get the drill done. Once the drill's done, then we're thinking about our manual standards tolerances of -0 plus 5 knots and pegging it for the best single engine climb performance at VYSE that we can. Rightio. Now, let's have a think about some accidents that have happened and our 400-foot window that is leaving a void in our training practices. The first one is some time ago, about 15 years ago, 2010, and an Air North Embraer 120 Brasilia was conducting a training flight for an IPC. The simulated engine failure at liftoff during that check led to a loss of control and a horrible fatal crash at the just off the end of the runway off to the side of runway 29. The ADS-B analysis emphasized the hazards of in-flight V1 cuts in large aircraft and the importance of simulators for that exact thing instead. So firstly, what is V1? It's basically the point of no return on a takeoff roll. Right? In simple terms, it's the speed where you're committed to fly and able to fly in that particular aircraft, no matter what. Right? So it's a takeoff decision speed. It's the maximum speed at which you can still safely reject the takeoff and stop on the remaining runway. Very similar to ASDA or ASDR, accelerate stop distance. Most aircraft in this category, and this can be from King Airs, Conquests, and onwards, can have a V1, V2 rotate speed range, a little bit different to VYSE, but any higher capacity transport aircraft will generally be able to do this. And you will get a V1 cut, as they say, basically at the point of liftoff. Now, you can imagine that that's not a great place to get an engine failure. And that's exactly what happened in this Brasilia accident, that the failure was done. The aircraft's power levers, in this case, being a turboprop, were brought to flight idle. And this causes the propeller to disc up hugely. Now, normally, in a turboprop aircraft, most are going to be fitted with auto feather. And as long as that system is functional and working, the auto feather will detect the engine failure and feather the propeller. So the only thing you normally have to do is confirm that the gear is up and the prop is feathered. And that's it. You sit on your hands, climb to safe altitude at your selected speed, and sort it all out nice and leisurely at altitude later on. However, if you bring the power lever to flight idle, then you're not setting zero thrust, which is a power setting or a torque setting, normally pretty close to the effects of a feathered propeller. All right. But instead, the propeller is going to disc. Well, it's going to disc up, as we say. So effectively, it's going to create like a big circle over that engine. And that means a hell of a lot of drag. And that's exactly what happened here. I've mentioned it before when I was doing my King Air training in the simulator, we did a V1 cut with an auto feather fail. But of course, they didn't tell me that. And early on in the training, and sure enough, the right engine disked up. I was full left rudder. I was doing everything I could to try and keep that aircraft straight and under control, and I could not control it. We just continued yawing off to the right, started rolling, and effectively crashed into the the Darwin Airport terminal. So it is a very real thing. The only way to do it is to feather that engine, or in case of a training situation here, power should have been reapplied. But this only happened over about 20 to 30 second time frames. This all happened very, very quickly. And no doubt there was a bit of startle and surprise involved in this accident. Today, you're not allowed to do engine failure training in these sort of aircraft. Anything over 9 seats and there's a simulator available, then it must be used. And there is a Brasilia simulator now in Melbourne and overseas, which Air North use for all this crucial training. But what about us in the little aircraft, in the light twins, Seminoles, Barons, Duchesses, all that sort of stuff? How do we deal with this? Right? And even bigger aircraft still. So the Mallard, DC-3 here, the Conquests that don't have simulators. All right. And I've mentioned before that we talked about V1 cuts in the Conquest, but I never did one. It was always engine phase up above 400 feet, relatively benign in the scheme of intensity as far as that goes. All right. It wasn't until that King Air V1 cut that I really understood the importance of ensuring that auto feather was functional, working, and the gear was up to give me a chance. So let's have a look at the crash of the E55 Baron in Cowra. This was in April 2024 and IFR training. The instructor simulated a left engine failure by pulling the mixture to idle cutoff during a training approach. Later on, the aircraft got a bit fast and the student decided to do a go-around. Unfortunately, this happened to be below VMCA, which is the minimum control speed airborne, and led to a loss of control, and the aircraft flipped over, nose down, and crashed into the grass. Remarkably, both the instructor and student survived. They're incredibly lucky. The main thing was that they were nose down at such an attitude that the engines actually bent up over the top of the wing, which is effectively under the wing because they're upside down, and this propped up the main cabin. Otherwise, it could have been a horrible outcome. Now, the argument or the safety case that the HSB put out here is operators' procedures for simulating engine failure should align with manufacturer guidance, and at times, in the PUH, the manufacturer will recommend using the throttle for simulating the engine failure. Obviously, also not initiating go-arounds below VMCA with asymmetric thrust, which is an absolute no-brainer. Now, what we're looking at is now an argument for and against the use of throttle and the use of mixture. And I know when this accident happened and the report came out, a lot of key multi-engine instructors throughout Australia actually contacted me and thought, what's going to happen here? Now, CASA has not done anything or released any further guidance because of this, but it does raise questions, and a lot of people who I know and respect in this area are very much concerned with a push to only use throttle for simulating engine failures. Now, why is that? First of all, when we do training, we want it to be as realistic and unannounced as possible. However, we have processes and procedures in place where we must differentiate between the training simulation or if it's actually real. Remember, there's not going to be anything worse than a student thinking something's practice pretend, doesn't maybe take it as seriously as it should be when it's actually the real thing. So most of us will call out practice or simulated so the student knows, plus we're usually going out with the full intention of conducting training scenarios. The other thing is if we use the throttle, well, the throttle's already back. So you go your mixture up, pitch up, power up, gear up, flap up. But you can always see the throttle's back. Simulate closing the dead engine. Well, it's already closed. And I know for a fact that doing some throttle engine failures, then covering up the mixture levers and doing a mixture cutoff usually ends up in the misidentification of the engine failure, because the student's been so used to just looking at the throttle instead of the actual main symptoms that we're trying to draw their attention to, like yaw out the front window. So there is some disadvantages by doing that. And if we dumb down and over mitigate the training too much, then we're potentially not doing students a service, pilots a service for practicing these drills and procedures. So our 400 window, how are we going to do this? Well, talking about my little elite simulator earlier, I have conducted engine failure training on takeoff at rotate just above takeoff in the simulator, VMC and IMC, depending on what training I'm doing, with some really good results. First of all, not even the mixture, all throttles pulled back because I'm clicking a button on the screen. So the identification takes a couple of seconds longer. All right. Think about the Sully situation. We're not announcing all this is happening. So the student has to detect that the failures, first of all, happened, go through the process, and I can simulate a hot, high density altitude, poor performance day. We can do a reduced power takeoff. There's a lot of little things you can do. You can fail an undercarriage so it doesn't retract properly. Make sure that they've done their drills properly. There's a lot of gain and benefit that you can do from that. And moving into larger simulators, as we said, we can fail auto feathers, we can propeller governor problems, all sorts of other bits and pieces that you can do. So if you're not doing that already as an instructor and a student, then I strongly recommend giving that a shot. You can really get some benefit out of it. And I have a simulator asymmetric session in my multi-engine IFR syllabus for that exact purpose, and some really good discussion can take place. So both of those training accidents could have been avoided. The main issue with the mixture being used was it was uncertain, or the instructor and student were not aware that the mixture had not either been returned to the full rich position, or that was done and the engine didn't actually restart. Now remember, when we pull the mixture, the propeller will keep windmilling, so it's disking. We need to set a zero thrust setting. And moving the throttle, even with the mixture throttle cutoff, will change the manifold pressure setting. So it's not a direct reliance that now means the engine's working. So do be mindful of that. And you do need to ensure that the engine has restarted now that fuel's been returned. All right, so that 400 feet, if we go back to CAP 523, that has the recommendations for 400 feet. Now Part 135 training and checking manuals, it's not really set anywhere else in the CASRs, but it comes from this past experience, past accidents, and it's just common sense. It's predominantly there for takeoff accidents, but it is also there for coming back into land. Now, if you've had any multi-engine training, you'll know that basically by mid-short final, you'll be back at 400 feet, you'll be back at zero thrust sort of power settings anyway. So you're always usually doing a two-engine landing. But this is where we must remind the students that they have both throttles, so that they do close both throttles together and don't just close one, and then we get all sorts of asymmetric weirdness happening in the flare. The best thing we can always do is brief the AFATO scenario to make sure that the student knows what's going on. So the student will normally give the instructor their engine failure briefing, and then I'll normally follow up as the instructor with that they are in the left-hand seat. They're the flying pilot, and if we have a real emergency, that they have control, and I'm going to assist. And if they're struggling or not happy, or I'm not happy, I will take over and they will assist me, and we will confer with each other before we take any defining actions. Right? So that way we've got two brains instead of one. Remember our critical speeds. So blue line VYC, at no time should we really go below that. The only time might be for immediate obstacle clearance on a takeoff. We've got VXSE, best rate single engine. Best angle single engine. But otherwise VYC. And that way VMCA will never be a problem. And at any point, if a simulated engine failure scenario is going a bit pear-shaped, don't wait too long. Just return the engine, take over, have a debrief, try it again. Always use longer, wider runways when possible. Mitigate risk, be smart, and use simulators wherever possible so that you can get the best training outcomes for your student. And don't do anything below 400 feet. It's just not worth it. Yes, there are some things that we would love to do to get the full benefit, the full experience, but as an instructor, you've just lost so much control over the situation, and one mishandling of the student could result in an actual loss of control situation. All right. So hopefully that gives you some ideas and some considerations. In the episode description, I have given the ATSB reports for both the Brasilia accident and the Barron accident. So I strongly recommend you have a look at that, whether you're a student, a pilot, or an instructor. Go check those out, and they will be of great use and benefit to you. All right, guys, thank you again. Don't forget that special fourth anniversary special on Patreon. 50% off memberships until Sunday, the 16th of November only. And you just simply click on the code. You'll see the support me section in the episode description, and use the code birthday4, the number 4. And that's all written in there anyway, so you can just copy and paste it. And I thank you very much for your support. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and remember the golden rule. Aviate, navigate, communicate. Cheers, everyone.